There, Dipti's here. She's doing the international papers. The paper's really full at the moment, of course, of those bombings of 2 hospitals in Aleppo by the Assad regime and Russia, depending who you believe, I suppose.
Well, bombings that the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has called war crimes. We'll see about that later. But L'Orient Le Jour, the French language Lebanese paper, reports on its front page, of course, 2 major hospitals in the rebel-held eastern part of Aleppo were reduced to rubble yesterday. It's sadly a daily reality for Syrians in Aleppo, as this cartoonist for the London-based Al-Quds newspaper illustrates. This calendar here, dripping in blood, and every single day is a bombing, and that really is a grim reality there.
And the Washington Post publishing an article which is really detailing the real horrors of life in Aleppo. It's
well worth a read, if for anything, for the fact that it's a real no-holds-barred account of what's happening in Aleppo. Bombs are raining down. The city has no electricity. Food is scarce. Medical help is also becoming very difficult to access, of course, with these hospitals that were bombed. Now, Aleppo has become accustomed to regular airstrikes in the past 4 years. But according to this article, the city hasn't seen nothing like the intensity of what's been happening in the past week. Hundreds of people have been killed. The World Health Organization says just 30 doctors are left in Aleppo, and they're being forced to sort of triage patients now. One example, a man whose legs were blown off in an airstrike was judged, quote, too seriously injured to save. He died.
Well, the horrors, of course, continuing in Aleppo then. Politically, I mean, Russia and US still miles apart, really.
Right, and that ceasefire is looking ever more sort of buried under the ground now. British daily The Independent reports that, of course, John Kerry told his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, that the US was threatening to cut all ties off with Russia if the bombing continues. Now, a former White House coordinator, Philip Gordon, has penned an article in the Washington Post really lamenting Russia's, quote, mistake in Syria. He says that a good faith effort to implement the ceasefire deal from the Russians could have given them a way forward, but by aligning themselves with the Assad regime and supporting these continued airstrikes in Aleppo, mean Moscow will pay the price, and they'll pay the price in the future in their relations with Europe and the Arab world. But of course, this is a very sort of pro-American, westernized point of view.
OK, well, let's go to the US now, in fact. Barack Obama being handed his first ever veto override regarding a law for 9/11 victims.
Well, that law is called the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act. Barack Obama vetoed this bill, which essentially allows 9/11 victims to sue Saudi Arabia for its alleged ties to terrorist attacks. Now, 15 of the 19 hijackers were 9/11 hijackers were Saudi citizens. But Barack Obama has been vehemently opposed to this bill. The Huffington Post reports that some Republican senators actually voted to override just to deny Obama a veto. It's also worth mentioning that even some of his strongest supporters also supported the bill that became a law. Nancy Pelosi, for instance, voted in favor of overriding Obama's veto because of her ties to the 9/11 victims. But it's a law that will no doubt draw tensions with Saudi Arabia. The Lebanese newspaper Asafir looks at the ways Riyadh might retaliate. For instance, they're already threatening to sell off hundreds of billions of dollars in American assets.
Something different now. The Guardian revealing a secret EU memo ahead of next week's aid summit. Now, this memo reveals a secret ultimatum to Afghanistan.
Well, The Guardian evokes a sort of quid pro quo situation. According to this leaked memo that you can access in this article from The Guardian's website, the EU is making its aid, quote, migration sensitive. It has reportedly told Afghanistan that it must accept around 80,000 deported asylum seekers in exchange for aid money. This despite saying in the memo that it was aware of the growing violent situation there. In fact, it's part of a broader strategy that the EU is pursuing to contain the migration crisis, making aid conditional. The most famous example of this was that deal with Turkey taking back asylum seekers in exchange for Turkey getting visa privileges.
OK, I'm sure some talking about double standards there. Now, finally from Dipti, the Pharma Bro is back with a bit of a new idea. This one may, though, just please his critics.
You'll remember Martin Shkreli. It's hard to forget him. He's called the Pharma Bro, or he called himself the Pharma Bro. He's most notorious for buying the rights to Daraprim, the drug that HIV users need, and then hiking the price up from $13.50 to $750 a tablet. Well, now he's auctioning off the chance to punch him in the face. The Wall Street Journal reports that he actually found a winner, a woman who reportedly is going to pay $50,000 to, quote, in her words, pummel your face repeatedly. It's all for a good cause this time. It's to raise money for his deceased friend's son who has cancer. But critics wonder why all the circus antics. Why not just donate the money himself?
You know, he's been called the most hated man in America.
Has he?
Raised the price of that drug, however much percent.
Make a bit of a difference, what he's done now?
I don't think so. I think he's still the most hated man in America. So.
I think Delano is donning his boxing gloves as we speak. He's going to try and put in a higher bid. I sit with the papers and Delano with business on France 24.